I'm the only one that matters.
The home of fierce independence, intelligent dialogue, and passionate logic is right here, right now.
I am very disturbed.
Get out of here, you low-life scum.
America, this is the dispenser of fairness. This is the unfiltered truth. This is Norman Goldman.
Norm, it's Mark Taylor-Canfield. How have you been? It's been too long.
Long time. What's on your mind?
Oh, well, I'm still doing my journalism up here at the MTC Report, YouTube, and Truth Out and stuff. But we have two initiatives here in Washington State that I've got my eye on, and that could set a trend for the rest of the country. One of them is Initiative 940, which would make it a lot easier for folks to actually prosecute police officers after they shoot people. Washington State has had one of the weakest laws in the country in terms of any kind of prosecution. You got to prove malice, in Washington State. So the Seattle Times did a really in-depth investigation of this. And between 2004 and 2015, Norm, 213 people have been killed in Washington State at the hands of police officers. One prosecution. Wow. So we had a big problem there. So a lot of the police reform groups have got together on that one. And then we also have 1631.
I never hear the pro-lifers say a word. I never hear the pro-lifers say a word about that. That always irks me, Mark. It just does. Because I thought every life was sacred, but apparently it's only prior to birth that every life is sacred. I really wish they'd clarify that when they talk about it. But go ahead. I'm sorry. I mean, we've got all these dead bodies everywhere. It's wrong. People dying everywhere at the hands of cops, at the hands of each other, all these guns. It's a disgrace.
Hey, 213 people in that 11-year period. So also, it's one of those things that I am embarrassed to report about being a journalist from Seattle. We have also the most regressive tax system in the country, a 10% sales tax in Seattle with no state income tax. We have no rent control in Washington State due to a prohibition by our state legislature, and our Supreme Court was suing our state legislature $100,000 a day for failing to adequately fund K through 12 education. So those progressives up here in the Northwest have got to do a better job on these issues.
And also, when the voters were asked to impose a statewide income tax with Bill Gates and his dad supporting it a few years ago, the voters said no. But also, Mark, you're raising a really good point, which is that there are a lot of initiatives, voter initiatives, referendums on state ballots all over. I mean, in Florida, there's a referendum to restore voting rights to all the felons that the Republicans have stripped of their voting rights to prevent them from voting. That would enfranchise, I do believe, like over 1 million people, and many of them African Americans. So please make sure everybody please make sure you check your state initiatives. It's not just the big issues. All right. Mark, thank you so much for that. It's a great point. Initiatives on state ballots, police reform in Washington. Look, California, we've got lots of initiatives, and rent control is on the ballot. In any event, states really matter. We're back where justice is served.
Let me take a moment to give you a brief rundown of modern American political history. Absolutely. And I can encapsulate it in a few words.
Absolutely.
4 years ago, the United States of America, in its midterm election, had the lowest voter turnout since World War II. Instead of having the lowest voter turnout for a midterm election in modern American history, we are going, with your help, to have the highest voter turnout. And what that means, and here's where we need your help. People in this country become intimidated by politics. You have friends who don't vote. They're going to give you long stories as to why they don't vote. My vote doesn't matter. Everybody is corrupt. Who cares? Nothing is going to change. On and on and on it goes. And your job is to sit down with those people and tell them, you're not going to listen to them moaning and groaning about Donald Trump. No more complaining, no more depression, no more despair. Now is the time to stand up, fight back, and vote. If each and every one of you does what is not really that hard, And that is to say, yeah, I am going to come out to vote, but you know what? I'm going to bring my friends and my family. I'm going to drag them out. You can double or triple the vote, and that's what we got to do. But what I want to say to you, and I think most Americans now understand it, is that in Donald Trump, we have a president who is a pathological liar.
My question is, who's going to jail?
Romney was a poopy head.
Yes, that's right. Lock her up.
Do you not understand the legislative process?
Definitely not.
This is the dispenser of fairness. This is the unfiltered truth. This is Norman Goldman.
Hey, do we miss John McCain yet?
This guy.
I mean, do you remember John McCain?
I know that.
Yeah, well, we remember John McCain. I don't think he'd be very thrilled with what's going on here, although he would be very happy with the continued state of the American empire. So thank you so much for being with me right here where justice is served. And look, we got to remember Senator McCain. And we're definitely remembering Senator McCain now for his signature issue, which is the American military. I've got a quick story for us. It's really, really important. I know it's not Friday, but it's a story. If you'll just give me a moment, I think you'll understand why we're doing this. And it's really important, I think, that we remember. It's not just on Fridays under particularly important circumstances. And this one, I think, the day before the election serves as a reminder. All right, here's our situation kind of in a nutshell.
Flowers and flags were left at City Hall in North Ogden, Utah over the weekend. The town of 17,000 just north of Salt Lake City lost its mayor, Brent Taylor, on Saturday. The 39-year-old Army major was killed while serving his second tour in Afghanistan. Officials say shot by a member of the Afghan security forces in an apparent insider attack. Taylor leaves behind a wife and 7 children, ages 11 months to 13 years old.
There is Laura Podesta of CBS News, and boy, do we thank CBS News for that. And yes, he was a major in Utah's Army National Guard, father of 7, his youngest 11 months. And he was deployed again to Afghanistan, and he was killed by one of the people that we trained and gave weapons to. And these insider attacks are rampant. Nobody's talking about them. According to Stars and Stripes, you don't get much more an authoritative voice on that, right? That's like the Army's newspaper. Anyway, Stars and Stripes reported Saturday there have been 56 insider attacks amongst Afghan forces attacking us this year and attacking their own this year. Insider attacks. 56 insider attacks. 121 dead or wounded from these insider attacks, Americans and Afghans. And a lot of it, some of it, portion of it is infiltration, of course, from the Taliban, right? And they pretend that they are loyal and they want to serve the government and all that stuff, and then they get in there and they do this kind of thing. And so Major Brent Taylor, killed in Afghanistan. Mayor of North Ogden, Utah, was elected in 2013, reelected last year, and his wife, Jenny, now has 7 children that she and her family and community, everybody's going to need to take care of. And the last thing that Brent Taylor put on his Facebook page was a reminder to vote. You can't make this stuff up. And so he put on, and he was very, very prolific on his Facebook page, keeping his constituents and everybody back home in North Ogden, Utah, abreast of what was going on, and he urged them all to vote. I can't think of a better way to honor his memory, at least the bare minimum. To honor his memory is to vote. And this is the last I will say about him. He was there. He was there. Brent Taylor, Major Brent Taylor was there. This is CNN. This is from CNN.com. Quote, Taylor had just witnessed the people of Afghanistan vote in an election marred by violence and threats from the Taliban. He found Afghanistan's election inspiring and a thing of beauty. Quote, It was beautiful to see over 4 million Afghan men and women brave threats and deadly attacks to vote in Afghanistan's first parliamentary elections in 8 years. This is Brent Taylor writing on Facebook. Quote, the strong turnout, despite the attacks and challenges, was a success for the long-suffering people of Afghanistan and for the cause of human freedom. So, he put on Facebook that he was proud of Afghanistan and America. Can we honor him, please? Look what he sacrificed to help people have the right to vote. Look what everybody before him, everybody who's died in service to this nation. We're at a really pivotal moment here. This is the future of this nation is really hanging in the balance. And Brent Taylor, we're still an empire. It's adrift, I'll grant you that. I mean, look who's at the head of the thing. He doesn't know what he's doing. And it's going on. Anyway, Brent Taylor asked us to vote. Look at the price he paid. I think we can vote. We ought to vote. It's very important to vote. If you missed the first hour, it's all about why it's important to vote and how you understand all that's going on. Check out the first hour, free, commercial free, normangoldman.com. All right, Tom, if you want to help pass away the hours here, so you don't grind your teeth down to a nub and bite your fingernails down to nothing, I can give you a tip, which is go down to the public library and go out on the internet and look at the period in American history in the 1880s and 1890s. And if you really want to have some fun, start in about 1875. And in particular, look at the rise of John D. Rockefeller and Standard Oil. Look at the railroad trusts. They called them trusts. The reason was because some enterprising lawyer back in those days said, hey, we can control an industry through a trust. And so a lawyer, right? It's always the bleeping lawyers. A lawyer came up with the idea of structuring the legal structures, the legal organizations. They were called trusts. And John D. Rockefeller ran the oil industry. He owned the oil industry in America. It was a monopoly, and he ran it through a trust. And then you had Jay Gould, and you had all the robber barons, all the Huntingtons and the Stanfords with the railroads, and you had the Carnegie with the steel, and they all ran they're all monopolists. It looked very much like Putin's Russia today, right? They were oligarchs. I mean, that's what these guys were. And so if you go back and you look at American history in those days, you'll see, and by the way, that's why they're called antitrust laws. That's why we call them antitrust laws, because back in those days, the laws were there to bust up trusts, and it was the trusts that were actually owning everything in for one oligarch. So, Tom, what I'm suggesting to you is if you go back and you read American history, you'll see that there were some parallels to what's going on now that'll make your eyebrows stand on end, because you'll be like, wow, you mean there was wealth and income inequality in major proportions then, and people were getting trampled because the economy was rigged and fixed by these big companies that owned it all, and people got really mad, and the politicians were all corrupt, and the politicians weren't listening to the people, so the people finally got sick and tired, and they kicked the bums out and put in new people, and they got the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890, which the Supreme Court then kicked out and said it was unconstitutional 5 years later, in 1895. So, Tom, what I'm telling you is that this nation has seen this before, and it doesn't mean we're going to have the same good results now. What I'm saying is we have been tested before, and we are in that moment now. We're being tested. The soul of this nation is being tested. We have some very, very dark forces here that have seized power, and I am very curious to see whether this is 1968 or 2018. This nation is made, and by golly, we're going to find out tomorrow and Wednesday and Thursday maybe even, but we're going to find out. This is a test of this nation, and we're going to find out whether this nation is the George Wallace America of 1968 or the John C. Calhoun America of 1848 or whatever the heck it was. Boy, if you don't know, hey, Tom, when you're down at the library, check out the South Carolinian John C. Calhoun. If you want to,
I'll check that out. Yeah.
Boy, there's no more bad guy in American history.
I know he was bad. Well, so was George Wallace. And when I was stationed at Presidio, on his active duty, I remember I was on TV when George Wallace got shot and ended up in a wheelchair, and and all that. And I think he was prejudiced and racist. I think to the day he left, he kicked off.
No, he actually, he reformed himself at the end. He repented. He did.
Oh, he did. I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and he got shot in Laurel, Maryland, in 1972. Arthur Bremer was the guy that shot him.
Right. I remember that.
But George Wallace, actually, towards the end of his life, in his latter years, he kind of changed, and he apologized, and he actually started making friends in the African American community. It's kind of an underreported story about the guy, but George Wallace, in his day, before he got shot in the 60s, when he was articulating all the stuff that Benedict Donald is saying today, well, he had a big audience then. And look, they're still around. They managed to get complete control of the government now, 50 years later. I'm looking to see the reaction. Tom, thank you so very much. And look, here's a great citizen, Tom, right? He's in Northern California. Sam Bruno, he's on Real Talk 910 with us in the San Francisco Bay Area, but he's talking about helping Katie Hill. She's down here in the Los Angeles area. She's a Democratic challenger against an incumbent Republican, a guy named Steve Knight, and that's in Northern Los Angeles County, and he's 400 miles away. So, there's also Devin Nunes, who's got, Devin Nunes. Everybody knows Devin Nunes, right? Andrew Jans, J-A-N-Z, is a Democrat running against him. If you're in a district where you've got a Democrat and it looks good for the Democrat, check the next district next door and the other one in the other direction. There's a chance that not too far away, there's a district you can just, travel into and help them out.